Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Tuesday, June 13th, 2017 edition of VR News. Going to start just with a quick Rift update. Got it working. I finally remembered what the issue was. My 1080, along with a lot of the 980s that are EVGA, for some reason require an active adapter. They don't work directly plugged in, and they don't work with passive adapters. It has to be an active. Thankfully, I managed to pack one. All the rest of my daughter's car, which is still back west, I'll drive that over at a later date. But yeah, all the rest of my active adapters there. So I have it. Everything's up and running. Rift, Vive, PlayStation VR. Can't wait to start cranking out videos for those again. Let's start with today's E3 news. I want to start with Skyrim VR. So many hours ago when this was talked about, I was a little disappointed. And I was disappointed, yes, people are going to point out, but you have a PlayStation VR, Epix. Why do you care? True, I do, but that doesn't mean I still don't prefer specific platforms for specific games. And for me, Fallout 4, Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind, all of those games to me are made much more enjoyable through modding. I love modding them. Graphic overhauls, stealth overhauls, adding quests, items, you get the drift. That's fun for me. So yeah, I was disappointed, right? In the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, hopefully this is an exclusive, and at some point we do see it on the Vive. We know probably not the Rift because of the politics involved, but the Vive, we should see it. Confirmed, well, not officially confirmed, but hopefully confirmed by RoadtoVR within the last few hours, saying that their sources, they didn't reveal where and who, saying that it's a timed exclusive for PlayStation VR and that it will likely be coming out for the Vive. So who knows how long that is. You know, hopefully we see it at some point, because that one probably excited me more, the thought of it, than the Doom VFR. Even though I liked it, because of the teleportation thing, you know, that kind of went back a little bit for me. Still going to play it. So hopefully we see Skyrim within months of PlayStation VR. Now, if it comes out in the fall, probably won't be until holiday season is past. All right, next up, E3, Ubisoft, and a game called Space Junkies. Now, Space Junkies didn't look amazing to me, but what I liked was what they developed Space Junkies with. A VR game engine that they created from the ground up called Brigitte. And what's cool about Brigitte is the version that they used for Space Junkies was a prototype. Apparently they have this fully up and running, and that's not unusual, right? Game companies, since sprite editors back in the day, have been using tools, libraries, game engines. But generally a game engine implies all the tools that they use for this that they've developed under one umbrella in an easy-to-use, streamlined fashion. And if that's the case, they should be able to crank out games a lot quicker with Brigitte. So good potential future for Ubisoft and virtual reality games. All right, now let's get into PlayStation VR, because really PlayStation VR, that was the majority of game announcements for virtual reality today. So if you are a PlayStation VR owner, you're probably pretty happy with what was announced, right? And, you know, let's start with the first one, Superhot. This one apparently only weeks away. Superhot was a game I really enjoyed. Hopefully it's going to support the aim controller, but definitely a good title. Those of you with just PlayStation VR, definitely a game I can recommend right off the bat. Next up, we have Star Child, which looks to be an evolved action platformer, this according to RoadtoVR. And the developer behind this is called Playful. And it kind of looked like a little bit out of Gods of War, where you've got the character going across, but instead of fighting what looked to be a big, god boss monster, he goes on the palm and off to who knows where. But looks good. It's not a sequel to Lucky's Tale, because they're the same devs behind that game. They did do a sequel. It's non-VR, but this is their virtual reality effort for PlayStation VR, Star Child. And then next up, from developer Supermassive Games, these are the guys behind Until Dawn, which was the roller coaster ride horror game. I really enjoyed that on PlayStation VR. It was a fantastic game. It's fun to play with the PlayStation controllers, and they're not the best at tracking, but damn, that game, a hell of a lot of fun. The Inpatient is their offering for PlayStation VR, the first of two. What's neat about this game is if you played Until Dawn, you'll know that you're going through an insane asylum, right? Well, this thing was running full tilt in the 1950s, and that's where the game, The Inpatient, takes place. In the 1950s, you as an inpatient in a crazed, psychiatric institution, which they weren't too PC back then, was simply called the Insane Asylum, right? So that's The Inpatient from Supermassive Games. Next up, Bravo Team. This is a first-person shooter from same developer, Supermassive Games, also going to be coming out for PlayStation VR. And then this one, probably the oddest one. I don't know what to make of it yet, guys. It really just kind of knocked me back. It is Final Fantasy 15, which, yes, dropped off the planet, right? We used to think it was going to be some kind of add-on that we'd be able to enjoy PlayStation VR at the same time as when the game came out. Then we heard nothing pretty much on this. Well, now it's back, only different. And it looks it is DLC, but it looks to be some kind of strange fishing simulator. I don't know if there's still fighting involved or if it's just fishing. And I know there's people who might be interested in that. For me personally, probably going to pass unless it's really good fishing. And how good does fishing get? And if you're a fisherman, cut me some slack, guys. I know you are excited about that, but yeah, not a hobby of mine, right? But have fun. Next up, Moss. This one from Gunfire Games. And what I really liked about this was the wording that RoadtoVR used for this, calling it a Zelda-like game. Especially the Zeldas. Now, I missed all the SNES ones, right? I've gone back retro to play them. But at the time, I was heavily into the Commodore, Amiga, PC gaming, so most of those passed me by. The newer Zeldas from about GameCube on, I enjoyed them, right? The Wind Waker and all of those, I had fun with them. They were okay. They weren't fantastic blow my mind games, but I enjoyed them. So when they say that, well, of course I'm going to pay attention. And, the characters look nothing like it. They simply use that as a description. It's a Zelda-like game. So those Zelda game mechanics are what you can expect. Again, the game is called Moss, so focus on exploration and puzzles rather than combat. So yes, Zelda-like, but instead of combat, puzzles, exploration. Definitely something, when I hear more, if it catches my interest, I'll check out, right? Next up, a Japanese game, and this one was exclusively in Japan for Sony PlayStation VR. Now it's going to get a fall Western launch. It's called No Heroes Allowed VR from developer Sony Japan Studios, which would explain why we didn't see it initially. Hopefully they do a good job on the localization. Don't really know too much about the game. We'll definitely dig deeper into it and try to cover it in a game-specific video. And then the last one that I want to talk about is a mech shooter. And when I saw the wording mech shooter, I got excited. Because if there's one game, and those of you who watch the channel for a while, that is going to get me excited about VR all over again, it's going to be a slow, lumbering mech warrior style game, right? Like Mech Warrior 2, only more like Mercenaries with RPG elements. I will probably not come up for air. That's all I'll play on VR. Sadly, Archangel from developer Skydance Interactive, not that game, but it is mech-based. It's just the faster, non-lumbering mechs, and it's a rail shooter. So if you like rail shooters, this one is for you. I'm probably going to give it a pass, but probably still try it for the channel. So the good news is not just PlayStation VR like the other titles that I mentioned. This one is going to get after only a 2-week exclusivity window, which isn't that bad, right? When we're talking months and years, that's a lot of waiting. But this one, 2-week window, then we're going to see it on both the Vive and the Rift. Not too bad. So Rift via Steam and Vive port for your Vive. Of course, Steam as well. All right, just a little bit more Sony news. This one, this news piece from E3 as well. Dominic Mallinson, he's the Senior Vice President of Research and Development at Sony. During their conference, he did a little quick video on where the R&D department wants to go with PlayStation VR. Talked about a couple of things, one of which was artificial intelligence. And we've had that chat. Imagine a time when conversations with non-player characters, right, NPCs in a game, is going to be so advanced you can literally have fluid, realistic dialogue. So they're obviously not close to cracking that, but that's a direction that their R&D is taking. It's one of the things that they're looking at. The other, and they didn't mention eye tracking. Instead, they talked about gaze tracking. I don't know if that's going to be, something that they're going to patent or trademark, but that's what they called it. And they described it, and for example, it might be you're looking at an NPC, right? Only you're looking at that NPC too long, and that NPC is getting bothered by you staring. What happens? The game dynamics could change just based on that stare. Maybe it opens up dialogue that's friendly. Maybe it's aggressive, right? A fight could ensue. Content could open up that didn't before because you ignored that player character or non-player character. So all kinds of cool potential for that. Call it what you want. But yes, definitely areas that excite me, both AI and eye tracking for sure. And then this news, this is for virtual reality arcades, specifically an arcade. Bandai Namco, and this is according to Polygon magazine, and I found this on VR Source, that a Mario Kart VR game is going to be released. Sadly, though, only for the VR Zone Shinjuku arcade in Tokyo. That's unfortunate, because I do love me some Mario Kart. Probably hands down one of the best family games when my daughter was a kid, for my wife, daughter, and myself to play on the couch. From the GameCube on, Mario Kart, absolutely. Now, hopefully, the IMAX VR experiences arcades, because they most kind of follow the Asian model of VR arcades. Hopefully, we see, them there after a period. Maybe they get localized. That would be pretty cool. All right, we're going to switch it up a little bit, move away from E3 to Elite Dangerous, one of my favorite games, one of my favorite virtual reality games, still in the top 2, Elite Dangerous. 2.4 update, finally bringing the Thargoids. Now, they'd hinted at the Thargoids, and for anyone who's maybe new to Elite or doesn't know, they're the main enemy, and they have been for pretty much all the previous Elite titles. So they're finally going to make their comeback, which I'm definitely excited about. There's going to be storyline opportunities and that overarching kind of game flow story that they have between the three, the Empire, the Federation, all of that, how those dynamics play out. The storyline's going to impact that, and that'll move forward with the Thargoids part of the equation. So the idea there is you've got the Thargoids, which are, an enemy to humankind, but humankind is all fractured, right? So in they come to make things interesting. That is going to be fall of 2017 for that Horizons 2.4 update. And then last, guys, let's talk about AxonVR. These guys, this was a story on RoadtoVR. I don't know what to think about this. Well, I do, because I've thought about it since I said that. I didn't initially know what to think about it. And here's the reason. It comes across, feature-wise, it's awesome, right? I love the idea behind a haptic suit. They're not targeting consumers, which is good, because unlike some of the treadmills, which we know wouldn't make good consumer devices, they came to the same conclusion at Axon, right? Would this work in a VR arcade? Well, the way they describe it, it's basically a suit that you get into, and it does a lot. It gives you haptic feedback on your environment. You know, you move your feet, you've got locomotion, you can walk in place, run in place, touch stuff, fully interact. Using, you know, they're talking compatibility with Unreal Engine, Unity, etc. But I don't even see it as a VR arcade device just because of the complexity of getting in and out of that suit. I see this more as the VR arcade may have one, but you got to book a time slot in advance, right? So if it was IMAX VR getting this, or an arcade in Shenzhen, you know, or in Tokyo, you would go online, you would book a slot, maybe it's 3 p.m. the next day, and between 3 and 4 p.m., you know, the first 20 minutes is getting you ready to get into the suit, culminates with the last 15 minutes actually being the experience. That's kind of where I see they're going with this. On May 16th, they filed for a patent. So lots of good technology. Don't get me wrong. I love the tech behind all of this. It just doesn't seem that practical, especially at the consumer level. So, all right, guys, that is it for Tuesday's news. Tomorrow, unless there's a cancellation, I plan on visiting the VR arcade here in Halifax, documenting that. Of course, that will not replace VR news. That's still going to be released tomorrow as well. Guys, have a great one, and cheers.